Hey guys, and welcome back for today's video where I want to take a look at some more polling data. This one, a national 2020 Democratic primary poll coming from Emerson, released on April 15, 2019. And the big positive takeaways here have definitely got to be from the Bernie as well as Mayor Pete camps, and we'll get into that as we dive into the numbers. And it's especially interesting given the fact that Emerson Polls has come out with these national numbers for the Democratic 2020 primary once a month, so we can compare and contrast. And definitely the big positive takeaways have been from Bernie as well as Mayor Pete. But to start things off, I just want to focus on the top two candidates for a little bit before diving into the rest of the numbers. Those being Bernie Sanders leading the way at 29 percentage points, Joe Biden in second place at 24 percentage points. Back in February, Biden had a 10 percentage point lead over Bernie, 27-17. And then in March, this is after Bernie came out and announced that he was running, the two were tied at 26 percentage points respectively. And now Sanders has a 5-point lead in April, 29-24 percentage points. So to talk about Bernie for a little bit, the narrative around his candidacy early on in the process is the fact that since he already had universal name recognition and the support from his 2016 campaign, that he was going to have a hard time increasing his poll numbers given the fact that he's already so widely known and his support is already baked in that other candidates were going to be able to gain on him, and he was pretty much going to flatline at whatever numbers he was early on. And at least in this data set, it's not indicative of that given the fact that back in February he was at 17 percentage points, and now just a couple of months later he's at 29 percentage points, so a 12-point gain here for Bernie. I think that is an extremely positive sign for him. Another piece of data that goes against this narrative is the fact that Bernie, of all of the donations that he's been getting, I believe it was about 20% or so, have come from new contributors that weren't a part of his 2016 campaign. So that's another very positive sign for him. Also, he's just had overwhelming amounts of grassroots support in terms of the number of individual contributions in comparison to the other candidates. And when you have real live people supporting your candidacy, they're likely to talk to their friends and family, get that support behind a candidate. And that's potentially part of the reason why he's been going up in the polls and why he could potentially continue to go up in the polls over the coming year heading into those early caucus in primary states. But we still have to track the data and see how it goes. But at least at this early point in these Emerson polling data that we've been seeing with these national numbers, definitely a very positive sign for Sanders. Now, Joe Biden, all of this is at least within the margin of error for him. So the fact that he was at 27 percentage points, went down to 26 and now to 24, it can be explained away just potentially by the margin of error. But there's also other couple of reasons why Biden is probably slipping here a little bit. And it's the fact that he hasn't come out and announced yet. And with all these other candidates out there campaigning and have already announced, that's likely to eat away at least a little bit from his support. Also, he has not been getting a lot of positive press recently. Of course, the controversy that surrounded him over the past couple of weeks is also probably another reason why he's faded just a little bit. Now, the narrative about Biden throughout his whole career is whenever he's run for president, he's quickly faded away. He's been very gaffe prone on the campaign trail. And I haven't necessarily signed on to this whole narrative that he's just going to completely fall out of the picture and not be a relevant factor. I think that because he has overwhelming name recognition and pretty strong favorables, his ties to President Obama being the VP for 8 years, I think also is very important to his candidacy. And I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with if he does decide that he is going to be running. I don't think he's going to fade like he did back in his prior runs for president, given it's a much different situation now for Biden than back then. But again, we'll see how that all plays out. I think that it's definitely Sanders and Biden leading the way, and the other candidates are going to have a tough time closing this gap, but we're still very early on in the process. Now, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, I want to talk about him now for a little bit. Very impressive what he's been able to do. He's in third place nationally here at 9 percentage points. We compare that back in February, Pete Buttigieg was at 0% in this Emerson poll, and then he was at 3 percentage points in March. Now he's up to 9 percentage points in April. Very impressive stuff. Given the fact that we take a look at this field here, look at all of these different candidates. These are all candidates in that 0 to 1 percentage point range that have been trying to make the gains that Pete Buttigieg has. None of them have been able to do it, but Mayor Pete has emerged from this very cluttered field that we have here. A ton of candidates running. But Pete Buttigieg now in third place at 9 percentage points. This could also be part of the reason why Biden might have lost just a little bit of support. Also, these other candidates like Beto O'Rourke and Kamala Harris, it could be possible that their numbers are transferring a little bit over to Pete Buttigieg, who is now in that third place spot. But then we have Beto O'Rourke at 8, Kamala Harris at 8, Elizabeth Warren at 7, Julian Castro and Andrew Yang at 3 percentage points respectively. This is also a pretty positive sign for Andrew Yang that he's out of that 0 to 1 percentage point range, now up to that 3 percentage point range. We'll see if he's ever able to make that next step and really get into the strong, relevant field of these upper tier candidates. And then behind him, we have Cory Booker at just 2 percentage points, not been the greatest start to his campaign. And then every other candidate is at 1 percentage point or 0 percentage points and has a lot of work to do. It's going to be tough for any of these candidates to catch lightning in a bottle the way that Pete Buttigieg has been able to do. But we'll see in the coming months if any of them are also able to do that. Now, if we go down and take a look at some more of these numbers, if Joe Biden decided not to run, Bernie Sanders is going to be the big benefactor of that, given the fact that 31% of Biden voters would go over to Sanders if Biden didn't run. And then you compare that to some of these other candidates. Pete Buttigieg would get 17% of that support, followed by Beto O'Rourke at 13 percentage points. So positive for those three candidates, not so positive for candidates like a Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, who are also in that upper tier group. Now going down and taking a look at the head-to-head numbers between some of these top candidates and Donald Trump, we see Biden still performing the best here, a 6-point lead over Trump, 53 to 47. Sanders behind him at 51% compared to Trump at 48. And this is, again, a general election. So in this part of the poll, we have Republicans, Democrats, and independents, while in the prior numbers that we were looking at, these are just Democratic primary voters. So a little bit different of a sample size and data set with these numbers. But then behind him, we have Beto O'Rourke at 51 to Trump at 49. So a 2-point lead there for O'Rourke. Harris tied with Trump at 50 percentage points apiece. Pete Buttigieg down to Trump by 2 percentage points, and Warren down to Trump by 4 percentage points. Now, Mayor Pete might be doing a little bit better than Harris and O'Rourke just by a hair in these 2020 Democratic primary field numbers, but he's still probably doesn't have quite as good name recognition as Harris and O'Rourke, so that's probably part of the reason why he's doing just a little bit worse in this head-to-head matchup than those other candidates are doing. But again, it still seems to be Biden and Sanders that are consistently performing the best in their head-to-head against Trump, with Biden usually being the best performer of the Democratic field. So that's pretty much gonna wrap this video up, guys. Touched on all the numbers that I wanted to discuss in this particular video. Subscribe for more of this type of content. I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.